Hello, my name is Christopher Swift. I'm an MFA student at Vermont College of Fine Arts in the Graphic Design Department. Silas Monroe is my thesis advisor. My thesis project is titled Control. I will be sharing some highlights from a couple of projects covered in that thesis. The majority of the work you'll see on the next 19 slides is code-based generative art made in collaboration with machine learning. My thesis is about moving away from my need for control over the design process and trusting my collaborators, human and non-human, to make amazing things. My early attempts at this focused on coding new tools or modifying traditional ones in an attempt at a sort of collaboration. These posters were made using a few generative programs I wrote for P5JS. These slides show the output of a program I wrote in processing that creates unique zines each time it's run. The placement of the margins, text blocks, image dimensions, and locations are randomly determined for each page each time the program runs. I made these zines, but I didn't design them. They were auto-generated by a program I wrote. In these projects, I had introduced a kind of agency through randomness that the programs I'd written could act on. While they produced new and often delightful outputs, they were still only able to develop along the lines that I had determined. They could only act as freely as I let them. So for me, this was a failure, as I was still very much in control of the process and the results. The project I wanted to focus on today is my most recent one. It is sort of speculative anthropology of the unknown and the almost and the maybe. The project explores alternative versions of designed objects important to me in my youth, created in collaboration with a range of generative tools. These projects are all the product of machine learning and AI models. They're very, very weird. The massive and complex spaces that these models work in can often lead to very alien-feeling encounters. Objects that feel somewhat recognizable but scrambled or out of tune in some way. These are GAN-generated typographic posters trained on data scraped from Trendlist. This project uses text-to-image models to create its outputs. I write a description of what I want. Here, a RoboCop poster by Beggar Staffs and a 2001 poster by Milton Glaser. And then the AI I'm collaborating with makes thousands of versions of that thing, and then I pick the ones I think are good. These projects are an exercise in collaboration and care. They require that I trust my network of collaborators. We are making these things together. These are all things that I care about in some way, objects and experiences that shaped me growing up. Speculative album covers from bands that meant a lot to me, posters of films that shaped my youth. This huge network of collaborators is helping me explore multiple possible histories of my youth growing up in the 90s in Canada. It has been extraordinary to experience. I am not in charge of this. My role is as a member of the team. Sometimes I seem to be ignored or misunderstood. I've been asked why the work is so melty and oatmeal-hued. For me, it's a residue of translation. There's nothing clearer in this collaborative communication, but that's how I know I'm really speaking to and hearing from the other way of knowing, thinking, making. This is me and someone else, someone really far away and hard to hear. I type into a text field. Here it's a Batman movie poster by Alexander Rodchenko. I set parameters and I let the network go. After a few hours, I get something that looks like this, plus hundreds of other versions. The versions aren't building towards a perfect thing, just multiplying possible iterations. The volume can be overwhelming. The process of picking through everything that my collaborator has made from my utterance is exhilarating. I'll sometimes go to bed and let it run overnight. I might sit and watch it as it iterates across the latent space of possible outcomes. I might tell it to stop and try again. Usually I'll look at it when it's done and then smile in amazement. These tools are all really new. OpenAI blogged about 2 new models they developed in January 2021, DALL-E, shown here, and Clip, an image classification model. Within 2 weeks, a graduate student named Ryan Murdoch had developed the first of these new text-image models guided by Clip, called Big Sleep. These tools are being created and edited at an amazing pace. I primarily use Latent 3 Visions, Clip plus Taming. It's published by Ryan Murdoch, running on Google's Colab platform to create the visual outputs. I also started working with the language models to write poetry and song lyrics. The prompt for this was a poem by Emily Dickinson titled What Might Be. What might be exists, is actual, and what has been unrolls itself. A foot may enter, an eye observe, a brain may wonder, a heart may break. My thesis advisor recently asked if I could record these songs in some way, so I sort of have done that. I'm using another generative machine learning model called Jukebox AI to perform and record music. Like the visual outputs, it is sort of out of focus in a lot of ways. It is a dreamlike thing. For me, this work isn't about a product or a client. It isn't about creating a new aesthetic for myself. It is about sitting with an uncomfortable feeling I've had about myself as a designer for a while now. It's been valuable for me to examine my role in the creative process more deeply, to question what I've taken for granted in my 2 decades of work in graphic design, to think about these things we designers do and make in strange new ways. To imagine what might be the results of thinking about our roles in strange ways and through unexpected new lenses. Collaborating with an extremely non-human design partner isn't the only way to rethink our roles as designers and meaning makers, but it has been a way that's worked for me and has pushed me past where I thought I could go, and hopefully the handful of people who read my thesis will share in this productive unsettling a little. These are the questions I want you to ask of my work and maybe also yours. What if we're all part of a network and not at the center or top of it? What would it mean to how we work and what we value, to the stories we tell ourselves and each other about the work we do and why we do it? We can loosen our grip on control, accept new forms of making from new collaborators, understand ourselves as one among many, celebrate and multiply in that multitude, delight in what happens next, trust we can make something amazing together, and care for each other with beauty and courage. My overall project is not about machine learning. It is about seeing ourselves as one among many in the creative process. It is about the value of letting go of control, about trusting and caring for our collaborators, human and non-human. It's about listening to that melty voice and maybe being interested in what it might be trying to add to the conversation. If you want to see more, it's all up at christopherswift.work. Thank you for listening.